Hello, hello. Welcome to this weekly meeting with our community Boston Technology User Group. And today is special because we want to share with you all the new experience, the hybrid experience. And for that, we have Paul Swider. Hello, Paul.
Hey there, how are you?
Good, good. So Paul is this week attending the Community Summit, which is being held in Houston, Texas, and it's the largest uh, community gathering in the United States. So, well, I really don't have too much details, so I'm gonna let you, Paul, to share all the experience with our followers and people that is watching right now. Don't forget to leave your comments in the chat, whether if you are on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and send us your questions. Oh,
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for that introduction. And so can you see my screen okay now?
yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so yes, I'm thankful for another Wednesday and to be broadcasting with the Boston Healthcare Technology Group. It's really exciting because our group continues to grow and we're broadcasting to new channels now, and so this is certainly exciting. And so, as Diana pointed out, this week is a little bit different because I'm actually on site at a technology conference, and it's one of the things for me personally that's unique about this is that this is the first time I've presented at a large conference in over a year and a half now. So it was today I gave a presentation on Power BI and goals and scorecarding, and so that's what I thought I would what I would share with folks today is go over some of the presentation that I actually gave at the Community Summit conference. And so first I would just start by saying today's just been surreal. I was just telling Diana, I feel like I did the first time I gave a presentation in front of a large group, maybe over 25 years ago. After not speaking for a year and a half, and then being here in person and having a keynote, and I think there's roughly about 3,000 people that showed up for the event, which is about a third of.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about
That's
a third.
awesome.
Yeah. It's still like the last event was in 2019, just before COVID hit. And on average, it was about 10,000 people. So it's about a third of what it was before. But still, that's a big crowd given everything that we've been through, But I think because people are feeling more comfortable, a lot of people are vaccinated now, and people were very safe. People are wearing masks where appropriate. I think generally what's happening is that inside the session rooms, people are wearing masks because it's a smaller space. And then in the bigger areas like the exhibition halls and the hallways, then you see a lot less people wearing masks, which makes sense because in a lot of those areas there's coffee and food and people are networking. And then they also have bracelets that you can wear. If you have a green bracelet, then that means you're okay with hugs and being close and touching. If you have,
that's interesting.
yeah, and if you have I forget what the other two colors are. I'm wearing a green one. I'm vaccinated and comfortable. So, but if you're wearing red, then it means stay away. And then there's one in the middle, which is like okay, let's do elbows or something. So I feel like the event's done a really great job of keeping it safe and making people feel comfortable to network. So it's been really neat. And so with that said, I thought this would be a great topic to share with people. My presentation today was on goals, and I'm going to go through this a lot faster than I did. This was, an hour presentation that I gave during the conference, and so I'll go through it a little bit more quickly here. But the certainly applicable in healthcare. What's interesting is that we want to measure goals and scorecards regardless of the industry we're in. And I'm sure many people in healthcare are already doing this. And what my talk was about today is how we can do this using a new feature called goals in Power BI. And so for those of you that are listening, and you may not even be familiar with Power BI, essentially Power BI is a product from Microsoft, is part of the what they call the Power Platform. And it's a visualization tier, I think would be the best way to describe it. It's one piece of the Microsoft business intelligence story or BI story or data story. They have a lot of components that I think, could be referred to as business intelligence components. And, for example, they have things like data lakes and, ways to getting data in and out of data lakes. And they have Azure Data Factory for moving data back and forth. And then, once you move up the stack into more of like the visualization tier, how we visualize the data, that's when we start looking at some of the features that fall under this umbrella term of Power BI. And it is an umbrella term. They've actually rolled up a lot of their technology over the past years has now sort of been folded into this brand, the brand of Power BI. So that includes, some folks might be familiar with SQL Server reporting services, for example. That's been pushed into, under the Power BI stack. There's stuff like analysis services and stuff is still a little bit separate. But so that's information for the technical folks that might be listening. The deeper technical aspect, but this presentation will be a little more high level, and specifically what we're going to talk about is a feature called goals that falls under the Power BI moniker or brand, if you will. And so what we'll do is just go over some introduction topics. We'll talk about scorecards and goals, and then connected goals, and then managing goals. And so the objectives, by the time you're done, you should know what scorecards and goals are. You should be able to outline the steps required to create a scorecard and give examples of goals in a balanced scorecard. And I am going to go through these slides very quickly because I want to do a demonstration as well. And we only have 30 minutes, and this was meant to be a 60-minute presentation. But, so if we were to start at the top, we would define goals as, metrics that we want to track against key business objectives. And in short, a scorecard is a collection of these goals or KPIs. You can almost think of goals as a KPI, although technically you could have a goal that's pointing at a KPI, if that makes sense, in another report. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment. But it is totally okay to think of goals as metrics or KPIs, right? And again, we collect a collection of these goals are represented in a scorecard. So one key thing that you'll want to know is we'll talk a little bit about some of the, and actually, you know what, before we even do that, let me just bounce out to Power. Where is my browser here? There it is. Let's just so you can visualize what I'm talking about. So I'm actually, logged into Power BI, which falls under, Microsoft 365 stack, and it is a separate license. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff here, but what you'll see is that when you log in, there's a hub. You can see over here on the left that it's called the Goals Hub, and if you click on that, before you even create your own scorecard, you'll see there are some samples here. And, probably the one that would be most applicable to healthcare might be the human resources sample or the technology sample, right? I think it's safe to say that all healthcare organizations have an HR component, just like any other business does. And all healthcare organizations have, a technology associate group, just like any other, group might have. And so if I actually click on the sample dashboard, scorecard, you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. I just wanted you to be able to visualize this as I'm going through the PowerPoint slides. And so what you're looking at, this human resources sample in the middle of my screen here, all of this would be referred to as a scorecard. And then all of these rows underneath it would be referred to as the goals, right? So here is a high level goal, become the best retail employer in North America. And then you can see we have some sub goals as well. And then I can filter the goals as well. So I've got 12 goals total. If I click on 3 that are on track, you can see the status of these 3. It's filtering the goals, and these 3 goals are on track, right? These are the values. This is a little progress indicator and the due date. And again, I just want you to be able to visualize this as I'm going through the PowerPoint, these concepts, and then we'll go back and we'll do another demo here in a moment. So now a couple of key things is that the technology I'm about to show you is really not that complex. It's very easy to create these scorecards and goals using the platform I just showed you. As a matter of fact, it's like, it might even be easier than Excel, because Excel can get very complex as you start to connect to things and do, crazy formulas and whatnot. But what I would submit is that there are some sort of key concepts that you'll want to know up front before you start building out scorecards and goals. And so the first thing that you'll want to acknowledge is that there are 2 different methodologies that you can sort of use, I think would be the right term, as you're creating your scorecards. And so the first methodology is what's called a balanced scorecard, or BSC. And essentially this is scorecards as we've known them for some time. It's a strategic management system where we're essentially looking at the organization in 4 different pillars. And then what we do is we revisit that, on a fairly regular basis, right? Some folks might do it monthly. Oftentimes it's quarterly. Sometimes it might be on a yearly basis. But there is another methodology that's becoming more and more popular, and that's called OKR, or Objective Key Result. And what's different about OKRs is that they're a little bit more agile, meaning that you don't wait a year before assessing your progress. It sort of follows the agile software development methodology, if you will, meaning it's an iterative process where you set a short list of objectives, and then you revisit it much more frequently than you would a scorecard. And so, here's an example of the traditional balanced scorecards, and you can see the 4 pillars, right? They tend to be, most of the time you'll have a pillar around finance, which is how do we appear to shareholders? You'll have a pillar around customers. How do our customers perceive us? You'll have an internal process pillar, like, how are our business processes going? What should we change? And then innovation, what can we do to continue to grow and prosper? Well, OKRs are a little bit different in that they're a little bit more, they follow the agile methodology. You're going to be checking in on a lot more frequent basis. You set the objective, the key, and the results, and then you iterate, right? It's an ongoing process. Again, the key distinction being that you have much fewer items that you're focusing on. You may have a lot more individual OKRs, but each one of those AKRs are going to have a very short list of keys, and then you're going to check in on a very regular basis, right? So you may even do it weekly, certainly monthly, I don't think you would go much more than quarterly when you're using this methodology. So what's interesting is you can have both, right? So it doesn't have to be one or the other. Slide looks off to me. I was expecting something different. I wonder if I'm using an old version of PowerPoint. But you can have both. So there is something called two score something. But essentially, you're combining both the BCS and the OKR. And something I want to call out here. I think that this is not the most recent version of the slides, because I have a link in here that actually goes out to a site. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I think it's ally.io. I know it's something, it's ALLY.io. And so ally.io is a company that Microsoft just acquired, but they just made the announcement last week. I'm not exactly sure when, the official acquisition happened, but essentially what ally.io does is they have a platform that focuses on OKR. And you can use the two together. You can have a bunch of OKRs where focus where you're creating OKRs for smaller groups and teams, maybe even for employees, right? You might even have certain key results that you're looking for from your management staff, for example. And so you could have many of those, but you could bubble them up to, a traditional balanced scorecard. So again, it's not either or. Now, we're about to switch topics and go more into the technology side of scorecarding goals. But before we do, again, I want to acknowledge that the technology is not that difficult. And if you're tasked with doing this inside your healthcare organization, a really good place to start is to make sure that you understand what a balanced scorecard is conceptually, and also what OKRs are conceptually. And so you can Google both of those terms, and there's great information about both. And also, I would encourage you to check out LAIO as well. I've never heard of them before. Last week when the acquisition was announced, and and it turns out that this is exactly what they focus on. And I just happened to be doing this presentation at the conference this week, so it was actually pretty good timing. So we start with manual goals. So the first thing that you have to do is when you log into Power BI, if you want to create one of these scorecards and goals, is you click Create Scorecard. And it does assume that you have either Power BI Premium capacity or you have a Power BI Premium user license. So you need one of those two things to create a scorecard. And then you go ahead, you create the scorecard, and what will happen is you can see it'll create a data set, an underlying data set as well that accompanies the scorecard. And then once you have the scorecard, you can go ahead and you can start creating manual goals. So in the example here, you can see it's just a sample goal, right? I was the one that created it. So it has me flagged as the owner. And then you can see that you enter in the target, and then, what is the current value? And then you can go ahead and select the status and a start date and a due date. So then once you create, so that's referred to as a manual goal. It's called a manual goal because you're actually going to be typing the values into the current cell, and you're going to be typing manually, entering. That's why they call it manual goal. You're going to manually be entering the values for the target and the current value and the target. Also note, actually, I should have mentioned in the second image just below that we can create sub goals. Okay, so we have a goal, and then the sub goals will be indented underneath. Now, once we create the goal, if we go into settings, there's a setting where we can set the tracking cycle. And so you can see here, the tracking cycle can be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. This is important because it helps track the cadence, and it's used in the progress graph of the goal, which I'll demonstrate that in just a moment when I'm going to do another quick demo after a couple more slides here. So once you've created the goal, you're going to want to update it, right? So you create the manual goal. You can see the one behind the scenes here is hire 3 salespeople. And then there's a sub goal, invite 100 people on LinkedIn to apply. And then, the target is 100, right? And so what I might want to do is in a week or in 2 weeks, I might want to go in and update the value, right? Okay, well, how many people did we invite on LinkedIn to apply? And so again, we're manually updating the goal because we're entering that information manually. So then we move on to connected goals. So what are connected goals? Well, very much like the manual goals, we create them, first create a scorecard, then create the goal. The difference being is instead of manually entering in the target and or the value, either one can be connected. What we can do is we can connect to an existing report. And then that data point would be used for the target or the value in our goals in the scorecard. So what's really fascinating about this, and I actually gave this example when I was doing this presentation at the conference today, is that if these underlying reports are reports that you create in Power BI separate from the scorecard. So for example, you could create a report in Power BI that connects to PeopleSoft, where your HR data is, right? A lot of hospitals use PeopleSoft for human resources. You can connect to PeopleSoft using Power BI. There's a connector for that. And then go ahead and create a report that would render the data from PeopleSoft. And then what you could do is you could create another report in Power BI. And with that report, you could use a connector to, for example, you might use a REST connector that connects to Fire services in Azure so that you could get at patient data in Epic. Or perhaps you look at, you have another report where you connect to a SQL Server database, which represents your pharmacy system, or another ancillary system. And what's nice is, you have those reports that management or stakeholders can view in Power BI, but then you can create a scorecard and individual goals and use the data from the PeopleSoft report, from the Epic report, or from the pharmacy report, and have that surfaced up into one scorecard. As a matter of fact, every goal that you have, including sub-goals, can point to a different data set. And that's where this starts to get really powerful because, I remember when I first started, talking to people about BI and at conferences and doing presentations years and years ago, I used to define business intelligence as essentially answering questions about the business, right? And so, this still holds true today, that, whenever we're creating a scorecard or a report or a dashboard, really what our focus is answering questions, right? How is the business doing today? How many patients do we have? How is flow in pharmacy, et cetera? And so the ability to connect to multiple data sources from different systems is powerful. So Diana, I'm hearing some feedback. Our speaker are you still hearing me okay?
Yeah, everything is okay. So I have a question actually.
Sure.
So does the scorecard has a collaborative mode like for shared goals on a team?
Yeah, you can share, and let me actually break out and do like more of a demo now because I don't want to bore people with, just with PowerPoint slides here. But so, this is, and actually you can't edit the samples. So what I'm going to do is actually use, like one of the ones I used, for the demonstration in the at the conference today. And you can see that there's a couple things you can do. So you can share this in Teams and collaborate through Teams. That's built into the Microsoft stack, right? But this, at the end of the day, the scorecard itself is just a URL. So even if you're not using Teams, if you're using Slack or something else, you can embed the URL into a Slack channel and have it available there. It's not going to be embedded, and it doesn't embed in Teams either, but you certainly can share the link and grant permissions so that you can collaborate on it. Absolutely. Was that your question? Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, so here's an example of a manual goal. So I created, this I created just by creating a new goal, right? So now I'm looking at the scorecard and, let me make sure. So I click on edit. Now I'm looking at the scorecard. If I click new goal, you see it's literally almost like a row in a spreadsheet, right? You give it a name and let's just say hire, new staff, right? And we'll say, okay, our target is we want to hire 10 more people. Today we have 3 people and we're going to start this today. And we want to hire those people by the end of the year. So we'll put the 31st and then save. And it's literally that easy. That now the goal is created. If I want to create a sub goal, I click on the little menu here and I can add a sub goal. If I click on edit, I can, as you would suspect, I can go ahead and change the values. So that's one way to update the values. Really what you want to do though is if you click on the little notes icon, you see how there's a new check-in button. So now I could say, okay, if a week or 2 goes by, I can say, we hired 2 more people. So now we're at 5 and we're on track. And then I'll just go ahead and, that little thing is in my way. And then we'll click save. And now, it's gone ahead and it's, it's added the new measure. And while I'm in here real quick, note that, this is where I can go ahead and select the cadence as well, right? So if I wanted to track this weekly, then I'll go ahead and do that. And then one other cool feature, just while I'm in here, you can also create these automated status rules. So I can say, you know what, if the value is less than 50% of the target, and we could use a value as well, then what I want to do is set the status to behind. And we'll go ahead and save that. And what will happen is now, as I'm updating the value, if it's less than 50%, see 5 is not, it's exactly equal to 50%. So it's not showing that I'm behind. It's actually showing that it's not started yet. And so that's it. I mean, it's really that easy to create these manual goals. But where it gets a little more exciting is you can have connected goals, right? So if I go ahead and these 2 sub goals, revenue and DevOps, are actually sub goals. So if I click on edit the revenue goal, I'm actually pointing to a development dynamics environment that we have here. You can see that I've set so if I click on sales analytics for Dynamics 365, so Dynamics is is an ERP sales system for those of you that are not familiar with Microsoft stuff. And then, what I can do is I can just go ahead and notice it's got all the sections of the dynamic sample report I'm using here. And then what you can do is you can just go ahead and pick, whatever you want to use for the data point and click connect. And now that field is connected to the dynamics report. Now the same is true down here. This is actually, this goal, DevOps, is pointing to a completely different report in a different data set, right? So in this situation, it's using a test environment of Azure DevOps, which is a completely separate service than Dynamics. And I'm connecting the sub goal there. So I gave this example in the conference today, tying this back to healthcare technology. The process here to use it in a healthcare organization would be, well, certainly you would have, you have the finance part of healthcare systems and hospitals where they may, they may want to track the revenue, right, as it relates to patients, et cetera. But, for example, instead of acquiring SaaS customers, you might want to track patient flow, right? And so the key thing to note is that the real science here, if you will, is learning how to create Power BI reports that then connect to these back-end systems, whether it be Epic, where your patient data is stored, PeopleSoft or Sage for HR or financial data, and then whatever you're using for grants and research. The magic will happen when you create the Power BI reports to connect to those systems, and then from your scorecard, you see how quickly and easy it is to create the goals and sub goals, and then you just map those to the complex reports that point to your back-end data system or back-end systems. And so with that said, in the spirit of just keeping this short and sweet, this is going to be recorded. And so I'd like to just keep it very succinct. And I think I'm going to end there. And hopefully we've met the objectives that now you know what goals and scorecards are inside of Microsoft Power BI. And I've given you some examples of how you can tie those into your systems in your healthcare organization. And so with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think it was really interesting, short and very clear, because I love the integration with Dynamics. I think that's really amazing and important and, attractive for most of people in the industry. So, okay, with that said, I think, thank you everybody for watching it. And if you have more questions or comments, leave it here. And, thanks for trying it.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.